See them all along the rocks. That's a shad spawn going on. Hey guys, welcome back to the channel. Thanks for tuning back in. I'm here getting some stuff organized. We got a little bit of rain outside, so I can't really be doing it outside, so I'm sitting in the garage doing it. And I just wanted to talk about the shad spawn. Right now, anywhere there's shad, you're kind of either full-blown shad spawn mode or right on the verge of the shad spawn starting on the more northern edge of the shad range. And it's one of those, it's one of those deals that really can make or break your fishing day. And what I mean by that is, and I feel like we just saw it at Lake Eufaula. When the shad spawn is really going hardcore, the fish will gorge themselves throughout the day or throughout the night and early morning hours on those shad because they're such easy prey. But because they fed up so well during the morning on them, they don't bite much during the rest of the day. You might have some really specific windows after that where you get a couple of fish to bite, but man, it feels like when you've got a good shad spawn going on, the fishing overall is not that good the rest of the day. Now, having said that, if you're willing to get up a little bit early and get to the lake, before the sun's even come up, you can do some damage right off the bat. You can catch a pile of fish. And at Lake Eufaula, that's what we saw. There were a lot of guys, who were getting out and catching a decent number of fish right off the bat. And the rest of the day they struggled because they just couldn't catch anything more because the fish are inactive after feeding all night and feeding into the morning. And we were launching at 6:30, and I think, if I recall correctly, like sunrise, I think that was well after sunrise. So we were catching just the tail end of the shad spawn. And guys were still catching a lot of fish doing it. So it's really one of those things that if you can take advantage of it, you can catch a lot of fish. So what does it mean to, go out and fish the shad spawn? Well, like any other fish, the shad have their yearly time of the year when they spawn, and this happens to be it. Normally when that water temperature is approaching 70 degrees, if you've got a warm night, likelihood is that the shad will be spawning. And if you've got a cold night, it's the opposite. You may have had a really strong shad spawn for 3-4 days in a row, and then we get a cold night and they just aren't actively spawning, during the night. So you usually need some warm nights. You want the water temperature to be stable and roughly in that 70-degree range, and you'll have it. And how do you go about finding it? A lot of times it's visual, guys. At the start of this video, if you watch it, you'll see, you can see the shad spawning right along the bank. And that's normally, the best way to find it is to visually see it. You'll see, the shad will be literally jumping out of the water onto the rocks, against the seawall, against boats, against docks, against the grass. And really what it is they're literally hitting into those items to break up their eggs, to allow them to lay their eggs, which they just do as they're swimming around. And if you're in a good strong shad spawn, you'll actually see them start spawning against your boat, and you can look at the side of the boat and see the eggs that are stuck to the side of it. So they just need some sort of object, and it varies from lake to lake. On some lakes, if it's a grass lake, like down in Florida, they do it right in the hay grass, right on the grass itself. If it's more of a rocky-based lake, they usually will do it more on docks or right on the shoreline or against boats. So they can do it anywhere. It's just something you guys need to pay attention to. And if you're, roughly in the month of May and the water's just hitting 70 for the first time of year, chances are that shad spawn's going on. So what are the best baits to key in on the shad spawn. So in my opinion, you don't need many baits. There's a handful of baits, and it really just comes down to what it is that you're fishing that has the shad spawn going on around it. So one of my favorite baits is just a dirty jig, swim jig with a Berkley the Deal on the back. Either the 4.5 inch size or the 3.5 inch size trailer is one of my absolute go-tos. Specifically, if you're fishing where there is a shad spawn going on around grass, this is the bait you want to throw because it comes through weedless, and it just mimics a shad so well, because when this is coming through those blades of grass, whether it's emerged grass or submerged grass, it looks like a shad bumping off of all those stalks of grass, which is what the shad are doing when they're spawning. So a swim jig, in my opinion, is an absolute must. It's also great if you're fishing around docks, where you can throw this up, ricochet it off the dock post, because that's really one of the keys too, guys. You want to be hitting your bait, regardless of what it is. You want to be hitting your bait off of something and deflecting it, because that's what the shad are doing. They're bumping the dock post, they're bumping a boat, they're bumping their bellies off rocks, off the grass. You want to do that with your bait. It's so much more productive to hit objects with your bait and create that deflection like a shad would be doing during the spawn than just say throw it out and retrieve it straight back in. So my number one bait for the shad spawn is a white swim jig. My second is a spinner bait. Not a huge spinner bait. This is a normal size 1/2 ounce War Eagle spinner bait. For me, a spinner bait isn't just like the perfect match to a shad spawn. I mean, you've got something that's resembling basically 3 shad, 1, 2, 3 with the blades. And that's what happens when the shad are spawning. They're usually in little groups, if not by the 1,000, but they'll be in little pods. So when you've got a spinner bait, this is mimicking a small group of fish. For me, if I'm not fishing around grass, and this is a great bait for around grass as well, but I'm almost always going with the swim jig if I'm around grass. If I'm on something that's just more of a straight bank, whether it's a seawall or riprap shoreline, that's when I would throw a spinner bait over a swim jig, because at that point, those fish are just swimming along the bank versus you having to bring your bait through the weed. And again, this works great around weed, but depending on the type of weed it is, you'll get your blades caught up, and you're just not as efficient as you are with a swim jig. But if I'm fishing just a bare bank, you can't beat a spinner bait. The spinner bait, in my opinion, excels over anything else. And I would stay in the 1/2 ounce size or even smaller. And a lot of that's just based on the shad. But a lot of times, a lot of the lakes you go to, the shad that are spawning are like the size of this blade. Not a big shad. They're just small little shad. So small spinner baits can be really good. So I have 2 other baits. The next is this is a small Chapo, the 90 size. This, to me, is an absolute phenomenal bait for fishing the shad spawn. Really, any topwater is, but I personally like baits that move faster. I would rather throw this Chapo over, say, a popper or something that stays in place, just because the shad don't ever stop swimming. They are moving so fast up and down these banks that I'd rather have a bait like this that I can cover a lot of water with, keep it moving, stop it if I have to, but just keep the bait moving to mimic the shad better than a slow moving topwater. Now, a walking bait is great as well. Any topwater bait can be really good, because when the shad are spawning, a lot of times they're right at the surface. And like I said, if you're fishing around a marina where the shad spawn's going on, it's not unusual to see shad jumping 12 inches out of the water and deflecting off of the boats. I mean, those fish are high up, spawning off something that's basically floating on the surface, and that's where a topwater comes in really handy for the shad spawn. I just happen to like this small Chapo the best. Covers a ton of water, gets great strikes, good hookup percentages, And, you know, to me, this, you know, solid white color, a chrome color is good as well. But, you know, with anything during the shad spawn, you want to be mimicking the shad with a shad color. Chromes, whites, that's really all you need. The last bait, and I've seen this excel over any of these other baits. It seems like every year I have one instance where a small little crankbait, this is the Frittside 5, this is the junior, man, it just seems like a small crankbait just excels. And I don't know really what it is, other than the fact that it's always on like riprap, or if you're fishing around where you've got some isolated pieces of wood where like a small square bill type bait works well. But this little Frittside is a great bait for mimicking the shad and taking advantage of the shad spawn. So I always have those 4 baits tied on. When we were just at Lake Eufaula, I had all of those tied on. And a lot of times it comes down to, you know, picking up the rod that meets the structure that you're fishing and figuring out what bait that those fish are keying in on. And it's really amazing how, you know, just because you found the shad spawn and there might be fish feeding on that shad spawn, if you're throwing the wrong bait, you won't get bit. You'll see fish busting all over the place. You won't get bit. You pick up a different bait and all of a sudden it's like every cast you're catching one. So it's just something you guys want to pay attention to. Check out all these baits. You know, again, if you're looking to purchase some baits, check out therealshot.com. I've got a 10% discount code in my description of the video. Guys, get out there, take advantage of the shad spawn right now. You know, with the warm summer months coming, man, if you get some of those really hot summer days where you're like, I just don't enjoy fishing during the day, get out, fish for 3 hours in the morning, take advantage of the shad spawn right now, come back off the water, go do something else. You're not going to miss much by being out in those dog days, but you can really miss a good shad spawn bite in the morning. Anyways, guys, thanks for watching. New videos coming out every day. If you enjoy the video, hit that like button, share it on your social media pages, subscribe to the channel if you haven't already. We give away monthly prizes. What can I say, guys? Thanks for watching.